wasn't great. But we are going to record just to make sure that those that don't have an opportunity to join us today can still gather the wealth of knowledge that we're going to have in this conversation. So we are recording now. So as I said, my name is Graham Wood, and we have both Nicole Miller and Michelle Grimm joining us today. Michelle, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Graham. Thanks for having us today. Thanks to the rest of you for joining. Hopefully we can give you some insight that will be valuable. My name is Michelle Grimm, and I am the current president of the Ohio School Counselor Association. I am entering my 30th year in education. Gosh, crazy. I am a high school counselor at Dover High School in Dover, Ohio. I've been working in this capacity for 20 years. Before that, I taught 8th grade science, and glad to be here. So excited to answer any questions. So thanks, Graham.
Thank you. Nicole?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Miller, and I am the past president of the Ohio School Counselor Association, and I am a school counselor at Bucyrus Secondary School. So I actually have 6 through 12 coming in this year as a new counselor in the district, but I have 10 years of experience as a counselor and then 20 years in education total as well. So I'm much, much younger than my colleague, Esteem.
And we are excited to have both of you joining us today. I love the shot. Oh man, yeah, we collaborate quite a bit on the work that we do, and excited to be able to collaborate more today with all of you. If you could in the chat, feel free to share an introduction, just your name and your role, and let us know who's here. We're excited to hear from anybody, and what you're excited to hear about today. So I want to give a little bit of context. We gave a presentation a couple weeks ago, Amy Szymanski and I, about the theory of graduation planning and how it integrates with student success planning. And it was a great opportunity for us to share some big ideas. And we hope you had an opportunity to join us for that day of the summer series. But today, I continue to get questions about graduation plans and questions that I really can't answer. That deal a lot with what does this actually look like in implementation? And I was in schools for a short period of time. I was a Teacher AmeriCorps member in Dayton, but I taught kindergarten and 5th grade math. So thinking about these kind of plans was not a piece of my tool belt at that time. And I've learned more about it as I've been at the Department of Education, but the world looks completely differently in the world of policy that we think about than it looks in schools. And a lot of this that, you know, from our perspective seems simple and easy and seems like a process to be able to implement takes a lot more thought and a lot more effort. So I wanted to bring to the world, you know, some perspectives of some folks that are doing this, who have the task of implementing this on a day-to-day basis, and let you hear from them. But quickly wanted to talk through, you know, what graduation plans are and how it fits in. So last year's state budget, House Bill 166, introduced the requirement for folks to have a policy for the identification of at-risk students. And this policy must include criteria for how schools and districts are going to, you know, identify those students, procedures for how that criteria is going to be applied to those students, and how they are going to actually identify, a process of notifying those students, both them and their parent or guardian, that student who has been identified is at risk for not earning a diploma. They need a plan of what instructional supports and services will be offered to those students once they get to that point of being identified as at risk. And it needs to include a piece of graduation planning. And you'll see that graduation plans get included as a piece of that policy. And just a quick reminder, folks, unless you are planning to speak, if we could just keep ourselves muted, just to make sure that everybody is able to hear our presentations. This policy was originally required to be in place at this time by June 30th of 2020, but because of the world turning upside down amid a pandemic and schools closing, that is now required by September 30th of 2020 that folks must adopt that policy as a part of their district or school. Now, what's required of a graduation plan? as a part of that policy, you have to have a plan for each student to have a graduation plan in place. It has to be developed collaboratively, and it has to be updated yearly. So you have to be having this conversation with students year over year to make sure that they're aware of where they stand with their plan and what's happening there. You have to help identify a student's pathway to graduation. How are they going to meet the graduation requirements? And for most of these students, this is freshmen and sophomores this coming year who are going to be engaging with our long-term graduation requirements. If you have questions about what those requirements are, I'd be more than happy to answer those at a different time. But that's really what the meat of the plan needs to be, is that it needs to talk about how are you going to meet your curriculum requirements? How are you going to show competency, whether it's through meeting that score or through a competency alternative? And then how are you going to show readiness by earning SEALs? That's what the beat of that graduation plan should be. And it should also include some orientation of all of that toward their goals, toward that student's interests, toward what they want to do after high school, so that we're pushing a student's high school career through and past that graduation line toward whatever it is that they would like to do, or whatever aspirations they have, whether that's college or a career or the military or some other self-sustaining vocation that student wants to pursue. It needs to be a component for identifying whether or not that student's at risk. That's where it fits into that holistic at-risk policy, is that the graduation plan is a tool in that policy's tool belt for seeing whether or not a student's at risk. It shouldn't and probably won't be the only factor, but it needs to be a factor in that decision. And you might find, as you think about a graduation plan, it's like, well, this really fits in perfectly with our career advising policy. This sounds a lot like student success planning that I'm already doing for students that we've identified as in need of a student success plan. And you're right. Yes, these things align, and they should align, and they shouldn't exist in a vacuum. So Amy Szymanski did an incredible job of thinking about these plans as a series of multi-tiered system of supports. So you've got graduation plans. That's your universal support. Every student's going to need a graduation plan, and it probably doesn't need nearly as much information as some of the other plans do. But then, once you get to the point, a student may need a student success plan, and that's that intermediate level of support where, they need a little bit more attention. They've been identified as in need of a little bit more help. They're at risk. And they need to dig in a little further. And that's why that student success plan needs to have a little bit more built on. And then you get to the intensive supports of students that do need an IEP and a transition plan. And that's that intensive level of support where it really digs into detail about how that student is going to progress in their high school career and for what their path is after school. But all of these need to be tied together. They need to meet the requirements of each other, and they need to play together. And that's more of a should than a have to as it relates to this plan. But it's really important. And those are the requirements. The recommendations are that, it should empower students to set their future goals, to think about where they want to go in the future. And it should facilitate that student planning backwards from that goal all the way back to their freshman year. When a student sits there as a freshman and is filling out their plan, and completing that with you or with your colleagues, they should have a vision for where they're going. And that only happens through backwards planning of thinking through, okay, what do I need to do to get where I'm going? Because if they don't have a destination, any steps along the way aren't necessarily leading them somewhere. It's that shift when we think about it, how it fits into our career advising policy and the career connections framework. You're going from career exploration into the career planning stage of that student's career, and they should be thinking about moving towards something. It really is about that alignment, and it's about making sure that all of these pieces fit together and they don't feel like they're siloed. And that'll make all of this feel a lot more authentic, both to you and to students. I've been talking for a while. Michelle, Nicole, anything that you'd like to add to what I just said, and then we can dig into our questions?
You know what? No, Graham, you're exactly right. And, just to kind of reiterate that, addressing the whole child within, how those kind of dovetail together and all the pieces fit, because we know that when students have at least an idea, an understanding, or a path that they can see, whether it's drilled down specifically or not, or very broad. Just having some goals and setting those goals, we know that their social and emotional health is going to be better, and they're going to have a better sense of direction and pride and so forth. But yeah, I just wanted to echo what you said.
Thank you.
I agree as well, Graham. You did a great job of outlining that. I think it takes a lot of pressure off. I remember last year with my seniors, a lot of them were just in panic mode because they had never gone through this process, and they were entering the world and they had no idea what they wanted to do with their lives. So I think starting this early and identifying early is super important as well. So.
Yeah, thank you. That idea of getting this transition into a student's mind earlier, though there may be some anxiety there at the beginning of like, I don't know what I want to do. It's not final. Nothing's written in pen. It's all written in pencil. And, there are people that at the age of 40, 50 change their careers. So you're definitely allowed to do it when you're in high school, and communicating that is important as well. But having that plan, in the end, it's going to be big. So like I said, today I want to talk about, thinking through what this looks like in practice. I can talk theory all day, but I'm going to point this question to both you, Michelle and Nicole, and I'll let you two work out who wants to go first or who wants to take the lead on which questions. But I also want to open this up to our folks here. Once we hear from the two of you, I know that we've got probably a wealth of expertise here in the room today. And you may be, an expert on one thing, and somebody else may be more than happy to listen. So once that we hear from Michelle and Nicole, I want to open it up to everybody else. But our first question is just, what's your plan for implementing graduation plans for this coming year? This can, look the same as it has in the past, or thinking through what that actually looks like, and what students are going to be developing plans next year. And before y'all answer, I want to caveat something, because I don't want to put Michelle or Nicole into a box of having to state anything right now. We are living in the middle of probably one of the wildest times in American history, in human history, of trying to adapt and be flexible and move. I think we talked earlier about the word being flexibility. I think another word that applies to this time is agility. And that means that we got to be on our toes, and the plan that's in place today might not be the plan tomorrow, and that's okay. So anything that Michelle, Nicole, what you shared today, what anybody else on this call shares, we're not holding each other to it. This is not anybody sharing their official plan or what's going to happen in their district. This is just an idea sharing session, and it's okay for it to be, unsure or up in the air. So just wanted to make sure that we shared that. So Michelle, Nicole, either of you want to tackle this question first?
Okay, so yes, exactly, Graham. We've used the phrase in our district, we're building the airplane as we're flying it, and that is so applicable. As far as our current plan for implementing graduation plans, so I can speak to kind of things that we've talked about here at our district, but then also things that I've heard across the board. I've kind of solicited our OSCA board, and what do you guys have going on? What are some thoughts there? And so there's a whole gamut of things. I can envision that, if, which I don't think many districts are, going full-time face-to-face, unless it's a pretty small district. So if we would be in a situation where we're face-to-face with students, we could social distance, we could use a whiteboard or a smart board or something, meet in a large area, social distance, go through that. I know for us, we have developed a graduation plan. It looks kind of like a credit check type thing, but it incorporates all the three pieces of the graduation process with the new permanent requirements. So we'll go through that with the students and with their parents and kind of put that in place. You could do that face to face. However, probably most people are going to a hybrid model, and some of those things would be an online. I have done these with students and families via a Google Meet or a Zoom, shared the screen, with that graduation plan, talk through that, where they were at, look at their credits, look at, where their direction is to show competency, and then also, where their readiness is and what SEALs are looking at and so forth. And then if we're totally remote, obviously that would be the option, would be completely totally remote. Also, I know that in some districts and in some things there are grants. I know 21st Century Grant can be used to do some after school things, and a lot we run into parents work and they're not as easily accessible until after after school day ends. So utilizing some of that 21st century time or grant money to work with students and either in a remote setting or a one-on-one come in and go through that. Schools also have used advisory periods with their advisory teachers, working through a graduation plan in those small group advisories in like a 10 to 12 student session. And then the other part was what students will be developing plans for next year. Ideally, and I think Nicole can probably piggyback off this, ideally, if we could have every student, meet with them, face to face and get that squared away, that would be wonderful. I think, to be honest, we're going to look at those at-risk kids, are behind in credits, that maybe haven't done well on the EOCs, but then again, the EOCs and the testing thing has thrown another wrench in this situation. But that's just kind of some things that I've talked to people about and I've heard, and some things we've talked about here at our school. Nicole, you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I am in a situation because I'm walking into a brand new district, and I'm responsible for 6 through 12. So my focus this year is going to be on my all of them, sixth graders, because I want to identify early. So although there are going to be kids that I'm going to red flag as we need to develop a graduation plan, those are going to be my two focuses. And it's going to be difficult because I've never met these kids before. So if we're in a virtual setting, it's going to be a lot of Google Meets with parents. So that is that is a concern of mine, but I think that what I'm going to be looking for, and I think this is true of any district, is going to be you're looking at your kids with a difficulty with attendance. They have large absences, end of course exams, obviously grade levels, grades, and just looking at if they've been. I have a 4-page list of failures this year that I am trying to figure out how to reschedule and get those kids back into classes so that they can complete their graduation requirements. So there again, this is like Michelle said, we're flying the plane as we're building it. So we're all in the same situation, but I think we'd love to hear from some of you guys about what your thoughts or concerns are, and maybe we can help alleviate some of that. Again, nobody knows exactly what we're looking at, but we'd love to try and alleviate something if we can.
Thank you, Nicole. And we've got some folks sharing in the chat. Does anybody else want to unmute and share what your plan is at this time? And like we said, nothing set in stone. Just want to hear from folks and know, how folks are planning to do this.
I can talk. Barb Duvall from Allen County ESC.
Awesome. Thanks, Barb.
Yeah, I have my grandchildren here, so if there's noise in the background, I'll make it quick. I'm specifically working with Lima City Schools, Spencerville local schools, and then our ESC ED population are my target schools. Also, there's, but I kind of try to take on this leadership role with the career stuff for the whole county. Most of our schools in Allen County have implemented career classes at the middle school level in some capacity. My Spencerville school and the 9th grade at Lima Senior High are using a specific curriculum called Career Choices from Academic Innovations. It's the Get Focused, Stay Focused materials, and they have embedded in that an online 5-year plan. And so they are just pretty much using that as a platform to develop the plans. everybody's planning on putting everyone through it, but we're also, from the last session, we're also starting the work with the readiness seal. It's not been well, we've not had a lot of participation in Allen County, but I think that that's probably going to change this year. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're at least at those schools. The other schools do have career classes, like I said, in some capacity, but I'm not really sure what documentation and what platform that they're going to be using. I will be finding that out very soon. So that's what's going on here.
Thank you, Barb. Appreciate you sharing, and yeah, thank you for sharing that. And don't worry, grandkids are definitely allowed to be on the call and share any of their thoughts as well.
Okay, well, I will put the name of the curriculum up, and if anybody's in, and my email, if anybody's interested, I can give you the contact person for that company. But I'll put my email and the name of the curriculum in the chat box. How's that?
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great.
We also, oh, go ahead, Nicole.
I think you're going to do the same thing. I was just going to let Michelle know that we have a question about like a template. And so I was going to see if she wanted to answer that.
Yeah, I just saw that. And also I wanted to say, Barb, that sounds like some really good stuff. I like that you're, starting with those activities in the 8th and 9th grade. That's super cool. And then I also wanted to kind of comment on Barb and mention the Ohio Means Job Seal Readiness. I think most places are probably going to utilize that even more. I know that we have at Dover have done that year to year in an advisory period where they do the Ohio Means Job Seal Readiness, and then it's an assignment that the school counselors put in our Google Classroom. We send that document out to the students, and then they have to submit it back to us via a Google Classroom. So being able to have that Ohio Means Job Seal Readiness, I think, is going to be a very good start. Now, also, as far as template and so forth. Yeah, I can copy my graduation plan template. I will change it to copy instead of edit. So what it'll do, you'll be able to make a copy of it, and then you won't change my original copy. It's in Google, so if that's okay, unless you want it in a Word, I could probably download it into a Word.
And and thank you, Michelle. And from the department level, I have been actually, based on a copy of this that Michelle sent me a while ago, been working with our team there to develop a template that we'd like to share from the department that's as comprehensive as possible, and pick and choose the exact parts that you'd like to include in yours. It's not a requirement, but we've had a lot of asks for that, so we're working on getting that available, and we'll have that hopefully as soon as possible. So a question, we'll go ahead and move to the next one. And obviously none of this is, we can continue to talk through all pieces of this. I think this is just a general conversation to be having, but, and I think both of you have already kind of touched on this, is how are you inviting and involving parents or guardians in the planning process? How are you looping them in to that student's graduation plan? Especially, I must imagine that a lot of this graduation planning would probably happen during the school day. So how does it happen that you'd be involving parents or guardians who likely are at work or busy with other kids? How do you involve them? What does that look like?
Yeah, I said, before, I think we're going to have to be flexible and creative. And I know that, I kind of referred to the 21st Century Grant, because within there, that's something that whether it's a counselor or a lead teacher or something like that could work through a graduation plan with students, and then, obviously could get paid through the 21st Century Grant that way. There's some creativity, I know, in some districts, and I know I could have some flexibility as well. But do you spend a couple hours after school? We have some trade days that could be used for professional development. Could you do some comp time? I know places have done that as well. Could you shift a day? One day maybe you start at 10 o'clock and you work till 6. I don't know. There's a lot of flexibility and a lot of creativity I've heard from other districts. And I think that goes goes hand in hand with what we've talked about. And I've been on several state working groups with Graham, and the graduation requirements and high school redesign is one where, you know, when Paulo had said to us, we need to get out of the mindset of educating kids in 4 years within 4 walls and having flexibility throughout the day, and schools looking different, like meetings in the evening or later on to accommodate families could be something that looks different. So yeah, that's just kind of a couple of things there.
Anything to add, Nicole? Does anybody else have any ideas of how they are inviting and involving parents in this process?
I can jump in again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last year I worked with Delta City Schools, and they were, they had gotten a grant through the
classroom. I'll probably record it and post.
They were working really intensively with the Get Focused, Stay Focused consultant, and they ended up doing what they call the Wildcat Academy. And they had, not only did they invite parents, and these were freshmen, and they did it in like 2 semesters. And they invited parents in, but they invited a huge amount of the business community around Delphus as well. And they had, the response was amazing, what they actually came up with. And they had 3 or 4, I think they had, during a semester, they had a beginning session, and they had it, they would have it at different times. So they had it in 2 parts. One was during the school day and one was during an evening. And they had, so they had parents and business people come in. And then by the end of the year, the semester, they had, oh gosh, I don't remember what they called it, but it was like a big job fair where they did their culminating project, and they had people come in and do like little interviews and just all kinds of activities going on. But the parents knew right off the bat, they had an open house right off the bat. The parents knew what their students were doing. And so there was a big involvement with the parents and also as community supporters and business people. So if your mother was a chiropractor in Delta City Schools, they would invite her in to talk, and she was definitely a part of all this. So that was part of the support that Lisa Immel is the gal's name. It was part of the support that she gave the community and the school at that time. So it was really, I don't know how things ended up at the end of the year, and I'm not sure. I think that they added an elective for the sophomores, juniors, and seniors at the end of the semester for the second semester. And I'm sure that they'll continue with all that for next year, because it was really an extremely valuable program, and really brought a lot of the Delphus community together.
That's awesome. And I really appreciated that point of, thinking about, looping students' parents in, but then those parents are also members of the community that not only are parents, but are, professionals that can share
Right.
their perspective from that angle as well. So that's an innovative way to, kill 2 birds with 1 stone and include parents, but also include business leaders and members of the community. Nicole, I know we had a little bit of an issue. It cut out there. So did you want to share how you're involving parents?
Can you hear me?
Kind
you hear
of.
me or no?
Yes, kind of.
Can you hear me? Kind of, not really.
Okay. Sorry. I'm not sure why it's doing that. So while Nicole's putting that in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and move us along, because I see that we're quickly running out of time, which is unfortunate. And I wanted to talk about this alignment. And this is a piece that, I understand in theory, but I'd really like to hear from the 2 of you and what conversations you're having with other folks in your district and anybody else here. how does in practice, what is the alignment of graduation plans and student success plans and IEPs and 504s? How does that align in schools? How does that conversation happen?
Well, and I can speak for my district. So, basically the school counselors are the ones that go through the graduation plans and kind of house the student success plans. When we go to a student success plan, so looking at those kids that are at risk and, maybe it's an attendance issue, and we've identified some different criteria that would kick out a student success plan based on, our tier 2 interventions and so forth. So the school counselors are always invited to every IEP or 504. Now, if we can attend, that's great, but we know sometimes our days get crazy and we just can't leave. So we provide whoever's leading that meeting, our intervention teachers with the graduation plan and where the kids are and how many credits they need and, kind of their pathway there so that they can convey that to the parents within that meeting. And then always, offer a follow-up if the families need to reach out to us for anything else. So that's kind of how we implement that. Like it's all married together. It's as you described it, Graham, your graduation plan is your lowest level, your tier 1, and then your success plans are your tier 2, but then you have your IEPs and your 504s, which are tier 3. So they just kind of build upon each other. And it's always integrated in a team approach, kind of with those things. So that's kind of how, it works here. I'm sure it's pretty similar anywhere else. And the difficulty is, and I found that, with school counselors, we cover the whole child because our 3 domains are academics, career, and social and emotional. So it's best to work together on that, because then you're getting into practice of working in silos. And for me, I'm just an organizational person that likes to have things working together and organized. I don't like silos per se. So that's how it's kind of, incorporated, and then we're the advocate for the child and working through things like that. But hope that helped a little bit.
Yeah, that definitely does. And just, having the conversation and collaborating as a team, it seems like it's fairly natural how these things do end up aligning, but it's a matter of trying to involve everyone in the conversation and making sure that there's not 5 separate conversations happening or 3 separate conversations happening for a student seems like the key. Yeah, Nicole, anything to add? We can hopefully, it looks like the internet might be a little better now.
Okay. I was just going to say that I kind of concur with what Michelle says. And I am involved in IEP meetings, 504, and things like that as needed, especially when we're transitioning to the Career Center for a lot of kids, their sophomore to junior year. I will become involved with that too. But I think it's really important, like she said, we can't work in silos. We are all working towards the same goal. And so collaboration is really important.
Awesome. Yeah.
Can I say one more thing there? Megan mentioned the House Bill 410 with the attendance stuff. And you know what, Megan? Yeah, you're exactly right, because that's something else that, as a school counselor, that we have that information as well. And that is actually one of our red flags per se to prompt a kid that would go into a student success plan. Those are always, one of our criteria. So that all of that is included in the House Bill 410 thing. Man, that's going to be interesting this year, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I think it makes sense as well, not only to include it in that policy for identifying students for student success plans, but also the policy that, houses graduation plans, that policy for identifying students at risk of not earning a diploma. If they're at risk of, dropping out of school, they're probably at risk of not earning a diploma as well. So making sure that there's alignment there between those policies and, you're seeing those students pop up there. I think that makes a lot of sense. So thank you. That honestly was a solid learning experience for me. And it's kind of what I thought, but, nice to hear it come from y'all. So I'm not sure that we need to spend a ton of time here because I think this has been part of the conversation the entire time, but wanted to provide an opportunity for y'all to just, couch this in the current situation that you see. And maybe this is a question that y'all say, I've shared my piece, and we hear from some others on the call, because I'd really be interested to hear, what does it mean that at times we won't be able to be together in the same room as it relates to this. And I know you've both shared a little bit to this point already, so feel free to refer others back to your previous comments, and we can hopefully hear from some other folks.
So this is going to be difficult. The COVID-19 situation in our restart plan for the fall. It's been interesting, and I was on the state restart planning committee, so it was really, really good. It was actually very good to see all of the stakeholders involved and kind of the different perspectives. So that was really good for me, and I appreciate that. And then how does that affect graduation planning? With the change in EOCs and now incorporating, using their grade for an equivalent EOC point, that has been a challenge because there's nothing that's housed in the student information system that automatically does that. So that's something that we have to manually keep track of and do, which is fine, but I think that's going to provide an obstacle and a hurdle. But also not knowing where we're going with EOCs and graduation moving forward, I think is just another obstacle to throw out there. So I think we have to be of the mindset of, okay, where are we at? We now know what they did in the spring based on their grades, and then just plan from there, and not, I guess sometimes as educators, we want to problem solve and fix everything before we, and I'm a very firm believer of being preventative and not reactive, but I think in this situation we have to be a little bit more reactive to some changes and be agile. But I think it's going to provide some challenges, and again, we'll just keep going through it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree completely, and I think the point that you made there about graduation is that, y'all know I took over this position in February. So not only has graduation been a moving target for the last couple of years, it's especially been a moving target over the last couple months. So continuing to monitor that, and hopefully that'll settle down and we'll get a good idea of what graduation will look like, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward and have business somewhat as usual at some point later on this year, and if not, I think we all understand that flexibility has been the name of the game here, and coming from all angles, and we would continue to want to be flexible with graduation, but with flexibility means that it's tougher to plan and to say, here's this student's plan, but it's got all these little caveats in it because of, this 12, 18, however many month period where the world wasn't working the way that the world normally works. So we have to account for that in all of this. It's an extra layer on top of this. Nicole, anything to add? You sounded great last time, so okay.
No, nothing to add. I disagree. Like I said, we're flying blind. So, yep.
Anybody else have any thoughts that haven't been shared yet?
Graham, another organizational piece that kind of worked very well for me during, the remote in the spring, and then probably moving forward with this as well, it is using a calendar. And this is just, I have a Google Calendar, and then I can create appointment slots, and then having that out within our school counseling Google Classroom, or emailing out to all of the students, so that families can choose a calendar invite slot remotely, whether, when they're home from school or after work. And I'm thinking personally, that's how I officially start back next week. So I think with my CCP kids And then with the graduation plans, I'm going to just set up appointment slots for those things and email it out and just get them on the books. And they can indicate whether they want to do a face-to-face social distanced or a remote meet, and then we can share a screen and so forth. That was just another thought that popped up.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I remember you sharing as we were starting to collaborate at the beginning of the school building closure, that opportunity and how helpful that was for kids that needed, aside from graduation planning, all these formal things that need to happen, just a chance to talk and to, have that moment is obviously social emotional learning one, but just mental health in general is such a big factor as we look at this new world and this new method of operating. And I know for me, even working from home, it's been a big thing. So I can't even imagine students who can't see their friends. They are, living in a completely different world, having that opportunity to connect and to feel some sense of somewhat normalcy is really important. So that's great. So we have one more question, and this is kind of a leading one because of what I see as the opportunity for graduation and student success planning. And I think I've talked about this before, but obviously, as we go through this, the requirement is that every student have a graduation plan, or there be a plan in place to get every student a graduation plan. So that may not mean that every student has a graduation plan in place this year, but by the time that all students are engaging with those long-term graduation requirements, students should have graduation plans, every student in high school. And it can look different in implementation in schools, and it should, but the why of all of this, what effect do you think this is going to have on student outcomes, and how can it be a factor in motivating and engaging students and helping them to have more commitment to their high school career?
Michelle, I'm the eternal optimist, so I'm going to go first. I believe that this is an opportunity for us to really individualize education. Actually having the time, and I, again, don't want to meet 600 kids in a Google Meet, but having the time to sit down and individually make those plans, I think is going to be a great benefit. And when kids see their end goal, right, and their future, I think going to be motivating and like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you sped up a little at the end there, but I think we got a good idea of what you're referring to and using that motivation as a tool. Michelle, anything to add?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think out of this unfortunate situation, we have to look at opportunities to do better. I think we can do better. I think that it is probably exposed or brought light to some challenges that we need to do some shifts in or make some shifts in. I think this is going to provide us to be more intentional with the conversations we're having with students and put it at the forefront of having those conversations. And that's what's important. I mean, I've talked to so many people across the state in our district, and the number one goal, it seems, across the state is pretty loud and clear, the social, emotional, and the mental health piece of our students and our staff. Because of this situation, how can we make that better? Because even before this pandemic, we had an extremely increased number of students with suicide ideation and things like that. So I just think that this is going to give us an opportunity to make things better, to have some organized, structured, laid out plans and have some goals and some direction for some kids that maybe, just didn't even see that they could do anything with a career piece or college or any type of training. So I think that's given us an opportunity to do so. I want to address a question somebody asked about, has anyone started or created formal early warning systems for this year? The tiered system kind of goes hand in hand. We just got at our district, and I know several districts use it in Ohio. It's called Panorama Ed. So Panorama, it's a social and emotional learning part of it is social emotional learning surveys, but also within the Panorama program, it takes into consideration real time, like students' grades are import every night and everything turns over in the evening. Academics, attendance, discipline, incorporates that with their SEL surveys, and it shows in real time where a kid is. So we're using that platform to kind of look at and drive our tier 2 interventions, or tier 3 interventions, and do some intentional work based on those things. So it's not really a system that I created or anybody created. It's a system that's in place, and we've used our wellness grant money to purchase that.
Thank you for sharing, Michelle. Appreciate it. All right. That is the last question that I had specifically for our panel, and I know that we are, a few minutes over. Does anybody else have any other specific questions that they would like to talk through or dig into while we've got a couple minutes? Anybody else? I'll leave a couple more seconds for folks to share, but I do want to just take an opportunity to say a heartfelt thank you to the two of you for being willing to join today and to share your thoughts and your opinions and your ideas. I know this is not it doesn't feel like we're living in a time where a lot of concrete answers can be given, but appreciate both you being clear and being as honest as you can about the situation and being real about what situation you and your students and your colleagues are in, because it's not easy. It's not easy. And school counselors, we know that you are, pulling everybody together at a normal time. So you're really pulling folks together right now. So thank you for the work that you do. And yeah, I'll stick around for a couple more minutes if anybody else has any questions, but otherwise, thank you. We do have a closeout speaker. Dan Leffingwell is going to share a bit of a call to action here in this COVID-19 pandemic, and we're really excited to hear from him. So please check out the schedule for the link to that presentation. And that'll be the last one, the closeout of our conference today. All right, looks like folks are jumping off, so you two are off the hook. Thank you.
Yay. See you. Thanks, Graham.
I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.
We appreciate you.
See ya.